My friends, what a delight it's been to be with you in worship. I'd like to welcome to the pulpit my very dear friend, Reverend Dr. Nathan Brown. He is formerly the senior minister at Sandy Springs Christian Church, our sister church. If you can see right under sermon, you can get the brief description of what his current role is. He is now the Vice President of Development at the Christian Church Foundation. So he's involved in helping churches and individuals invest funds for ongoing ministry. And he still serves our area of the country. He still lives where he lives, so we get to hang out. He's one of my nearest friends. And I could give you his resume. I will tell you he went to divinity school at Vanderbilt. So he's happy this morning. But I will tell you this, in all sincerity, I could tell you about his academic work, or I could tell you about his ministerial experience. I'll tell you that when I was sick and in the hospital and I wasn't doing well at all, he showed up as my pastor. And that's the only way I could see visitors, because it was still under a strict COVID lockdown. So he came in as my minister, and in grace and truth told me what I needed to hear. Basically, his words were, Jared, you need to take care of yourself and slow down and heal. And I wasn't hearing those words from other people so well. Because of that, I'm indebted to my friend, and I believe God has laid a nice message, a wonderful message on his heart for all of us. Welcome him to the pulpit, everybody.
Well, good morning, Peachtree Christian Church. I bring you greetings from the Christian Church Foundation. And as Jared has already mentioned, I am your new Vice President for Development in the Southeast Zone. And on behalf of the Foundation and myself, I want to thank Jared and all of you for inviting me to preach, especially on such a special, even historical Sunday. After all, Jared tells me, as you've heard already this morning, that today marks the beginning of your centennial celebration, a year-long observance to honor 100 years of doing ministry here in Atlanta and beyond. Of course, today also happens to be the conclusion of your stewardship emphasis, what you call Consecration Sunday. This morning, you'll have the gift and the opportunity to bring forward your stewardship commitments for the coming year, which will bless this congregation, your community, and the world to the ministry you faithfully live out. I also have the blessing of sharing and worship with you on a day that you're celebrating the baptism of so many young people within the life of this church, the beginning of an important journey for each of them. Not to mention today is what you all refer to as your Heritage Sunday, the day that you remember the past, from whence you came, the saints that led you to this moment, and an opportunity to thank God for the ministry that has been the Christian Church Disciples of Christ and Peachtree Christian Church. This is a special day of worship within the life of this congregation, and I am truly honored to share in it with all of you. Although, if I'm honest, while I'm heartened by all that you're observing this morning, I'm particularly encouraged to know that congregations continue to observe on an annual basis their specific heritage. Or at least for reasons I don't fully understand, many churches have stopped having a day to mark their particular legacy. Anniversaries, yes, but heritage, well, that's a little different. I don't know, maybe it's because sometimes it's hard to go back to the past. Perhaps it's painful. Although for some it may even be difficult when it's celebratory. Going back is not always easy. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's because technology in this fast-paced world is moving us forward so quickly it's just easier to live into the future, to consume the next thing in front of us and simply carry on. Regardless, it makes sense with a history as rich as peach trees, a ministry as vibrant and as vital as you all have had, to take a day to honor that legacy. I mean, just look around you. This sanctuary alone is one of, if not the most beautiful of sacred spaces among all disciples' congregations. With the help of God, you built this cathedral for the city, and thousands of people have been able to connect to the God we know in Jesus Christ in profound ways, strictly by virtue of having had the opportunity to worship in this space. Not to mention the countless lives you've touched through the entirety of your ministry for these last 100 years. You might say, that the ministry of Peachtree Christian Church is evidence that Paul, in his second letter to the church at Corinth, which we've heard again this morning, is in fact right. You most certainly reap what you sow. Or to put it differently, you get out of something what you put into it. Albeit, as you know, as long as it's in the right spirit. After all, it is one thing to give, but it's another, as Paul says, to be a joyful giver. While I was serving a church in Kentucky several years ago, I had a mentor by the name of John Wesley. He had served as senior minister of First Christian Church in Bowling Green for more than 18 years. Not long ago, the Christian Church Foundation created a video about their church, specifically emphasizing the church's permanent fund, which they had been intentional about growing over the last several years. Today, that fund is over $3 million, which for a church their size is quite remarkable. The monies that saints of that congregation had left as legacy gifts to the church are now used over and above the church budget to support outreach initiatives and capital projects for the facility, including a capital campaign, which they have just completed. I was part of a peer group at the time, which met regularly, and one month we invited Reverend Wesley to join us before his retirement to share some of his wisdom of more than 40 years in ordained ministry. During the course of our conversation, as one of my colleagues actually asked him and said, "What are you most proud of in the entirety of your ministry?" He paused and he thought about it for a moment. And then he replied, "You might think I'm most proud of the way that we've grown our permanent fund, or the way that we've transformed our facility over the years, or some of the outreach projects we've taken on that have transformed this community. And don't get me wrong, I'm certainly proud of all those things. But the truth is, I'm most proud, or maybe proud isn't the word, I'm most humbled by a letter that I received from one of my congregants recently. She wrote this: "I'm grateful to you for being a pastor to a church where everyone is truly welcome at the table. There is no church in our community where this is true. No matter who you are, where you're from, how you vote, your ethnicity, your socioeconomic status, we all truly feel loved because of the openness of the table in this church. Everything we have accomplished is first and foremost a result of that spirit. We have simply reaped what we've sown. As a result, it's a joy to be part of and support this congregation. And I thank you for leading us to this place. You reap what you sow. God loves a joyful giver." Notice Paul ties both of those statements together intentionally. You can sow seeds all day long, but if they're scattered begrudgingly, or with strings attached, or strictly out of obligation or guilt, you'll reap fruit that doesn't quite taste as good, that isn't quite as bountiful as you'd hope, that doesn't quite feed all that you had prayed it might. But if you sow seeds of generosity, without expectation of a return, that are only sown with love and respect and care and honesty, well, you will reap what you sow. 5 loaves and 2 fish will be enough to feed 5,000. A few containers of water can be transformed into enough wine to satisfy a wedding party for days. And one life given in love can have the power to change the world forever. Because you see, faithful stewardship isn't a series of transactions. No, it's a way of being in the world. Our entire lives are to reflect the image of God in which God creates us, that image being of joy and generosity and love. Friends, we were not created to give. We were created for stewardship. We were created to care for God's creation, to acknowledge that we are not our own, and to live lives that reflect God's abundant grace. And if you don't believe me, I want you to think for a moment of a person in your life who embodies the idea of loving their neighbor, of living generously, someone whom you would epitomize as being a good steward. And I want you to remember their eyes, the lines on their face, the turn of their mouth. And I want you to hold that image for a moment. And then I want you to think of someone who never seemed to think of anyone but themselves. Someone who's self-centered. Someone about whom others might refer to as perpetually cynical and pessimistic. And I want you to remember their face, to think of their eyes, the turn of their mouth. When you look at those two faces in your memory, can you see one who's living the way we were meant to live and one who has completely missed the point? Or to put it as Paul does, can you see how both are reaping what they sow? Of course, the trouble is that the world sees in the church today more of the latter than the former. Whether it's true or not, it seems to be the way we are perceived. Or at least according to every study and survey that's been done the last 20 years, that's what participants indicate to us. That when they think of the church, instead of thinking about faces that embody love and generosity and inclusivity, they see faces that reflect words like judgmental and exclusive and hypocritical. Which I suppose isn't necessarily a new perception. In fact, the late, great Fred Craddock, one of our most well-known disciples, preachers, for whom you actually have a lecture series within the life of this congregation, he used to tell a story about his father who saw the church in this way. And I suspect some of you have heard it. He says that my mother used to take us to church and Sunday school, and my father, well, he would never go. He always complained about Sunday dinner being late when she came home. Sometimes the preacher would call and my father would say, I know what the church wants. Church doesn't care about me. Church just wants another name, another pledge, another name, another pledge, right? I mean, isn't that the name of it? Another name, another pledge. That's what he always said. Sometimes we'd have a revival. Pastor would bring the evangelist and say to the evangelist, now there's one, sick him, go get him. And my father would say the same thing. Every time my mother in the kitchen, always nervous in fear of flaring tempers, of somebody being hurt, and my fathers would always say, the church doesn't care about me. Church just wants another name, another pledge. I guess I must have heard it 1,000 times. There was one time he did not say it. He was in the Veterans Hospital and he was down to 73 pounds. They'd taken out his throat and said it's too late. They put in a metal tube. X-rays had burned him to pieces. I flew in to see him. He couldn't speak. He couldn't eat. But as I looked around the room, I saw potted plants and cut flowers on all the windowsills. A stack of cards 20 inches deep beside his bed. And even that tray where they put his food, if he could eat, on that even was a flower. And all the flowers beside the bed, every card, every blossom, were from persons or groups from his church. He saw me read a card. He could not speak, and so he took a Kleenex box, and he wrote on the side of it a line from Shakespeare. If he had not written this, I could not tell you this story. He wrote, "In this harsh world, draw your breath in pain to tell my story." I said, "What is your story, Daddy?" And he wrote, "I was wrong. I was wrong." Peachtree Christian Church, continue to do now what you have done for over 100 years. And be those faces that reveal a people who have sowed generously and given joyfully. Do as Jesus did and keep proving this world wrong.